All right, so Big Brother has spoken. I would like to introduce you to the Fall Mental Health Panel. The SCDI does a mental health panel every single term. This time it's in collaboration with Active Minds and USGA. And I am extremely honored to have some esteemed panelists, people who are going to have some very interesting conversations for you. I would love to thank Thomas for being our moderator. I am going to be quiet after this so that the students can actually have the floor, but I also want to tell everybody that I will be monitoring the chat. So if you have any questions that you want to bring up throughout the event or at the very, very end, you can directly send them to me and I will bring them up at the end of the event. I'll send them to Thomas as we go through things. So if you have any questions, send them to me. Any comments, feel free to just send them straight to the chat. Thank you. Thomas, on you.
All right. Thank you, Maurice. As he said, my name is Thomas Austin. I am a junior at Drexel and mechanical engineer. I have been with USGA for the past 2 years, and I've mostly been focusing on mental health initiatives and communication with the counseling center and resources for students at Drexel concerning mental health. I'm really looking forward to this event as well. So with that, without further ado, I'm going to introduce us to the panelists. Now, these panelists, they're going to answer some pre-written questions. And then, as Maurice said, please submit your own questions if you have any questions, concerns, and we will get to those after the pre-written questions have been finished. So with that, Brenda, if you want to take away your introductions.
Hello, I'm Brenda. What else should I say? Oh, I'm a nursing major. I'm sophomore year and I'm currently on co-op. Anything else?
No, you should be good to go. The rest
All right.
of the panel, if you just want to fill in, just to get it started.
Good. Hi all, I'm Adriana. I am an economics student. I'm a senior and I'm an international student from Peru.
Hey everybody, my name's Alyssa. I'm so sorry, LaShonda. I do that all the time. I'm a graduate student at Drexel in the dance movement therapy program and counseling.
Hi everyone, I'm Tay. I'm a senior music industry major, and yeah, that's it.
Great, so thank you all for those introductions. I'm going to dive straight into the pre-prepared questions, starting with one that I feel is really applicable for the climate at the moment. As we know, it's been a bit volatile over the past couple of days. And so how has the current state of America or your home country, if you're international, really affected your mental health as we go? I know it's a bit of a loaded question for everything going on right now. Feel free.
I guess I'll start. I will say that I've had problems with America until it started when I was like, what, 15? When I actually started being able to learn the history for myself. And so seeing the world for what it is right now, honestly, it's very depressing on my end. Being that I'm very in touch with the history and like, it's not something that I didn't already knew, being that my family I have family that were Black Panthers. I had family that marched. I have friends who have family that marched who fought in wars. So it's like, I've never been able to escape the realities I already know. And it's more exhausting now because other people are starting to see what I've already know. And they're treating it as if it's like, oh, did you know this? And I'm like, yes, I've been aware of this. I've been consistently aware of this. Where were you? And I think that has taken a bigger emotional toll on me than the fact that everything's happening. Because honestly, I didn't think it would happen in my lifetime, but I knew at some point there was going to be some sort of like revolution. It's just, I guess you can say everything lined up right in this moment, this year for it to happen. And so that kind of shock of like, oh, I'm actually living through this has also been on top of that. So I'd say out of 10, I'm like a calm 4.5. Just about. So yeah.
I guess I'll go next. So I'm going to speak to being a Black woman who grew up in Philly and is living in Philly. And let me tell you, like, it is simply exhausting. It is exhausting because, you know, again, like like you said, Tay mentioned histories, like it was something that was always already known. And then seeing the history, there was two pandemics in Philadelphia. We had the, coronavirus, and then we also had gun violence that are happening at the same time. And so as a Black woman and a mother, I didn't put that in, but I'm also a mom, you kind of like wondering, like, what is today going to be like? Am I going to get tension from a cop, or attention from someone who just does not like me for the color of my skin? Or will it be from, someone who, I hate to say it, who looks like me, that has been impacted by the system that has created the problems? So it can be very exhausting. And literally the only thing that keeps me going is the idea that I know I have a responsibility and I am a part of a community that I need to contribute. And that's the kind of the thing that's keeping me sane, but it is very exhausting.
For me, like with the state of America right now, I've just been feeling very anxious. Like my anxiety is off the roof right now. Like, it's like I've only recently started like becoming more politically aware. So I have like as it was approaching the election, like it's like I was learning and trying to understand where I stand, like throughout everything. And then as the pandemic was starting, people were basically jumping Asians, and that made me really afraid. And like how Trump reacted, like it just made me feel really uneasy and afraid. So thank goodness for the quarantine. I didn't have to go out. But yeah, like my anxiety has just been crazy right now.
For me, it was having to do with a lot of uncertainty because as an international student, once COVID hit, it was like, okay, go home, quarantine. But it's kind of difficult to quarantine when you're not home. Um, so definitely had to reach out to a lot of people who were in the same circumstances and try to see how we can help each other. As well as I have a lot of friends who are very active, and a lot of the things that are happening now, I know they will affect them and affect me. So try to find ways where how I can be a better support of them and myself.
Yeah, and I think that transitions really well to the next question is, I believe like the turbulence in America really came to fruition as the pandemic began and continued, and these underlying phases really came to fruition throughout the pandemic. So our next question is, how has coronavirus affected your community or communities?
You go. Okay, so like I said earlier, like branching off of like in the beginning of the pandemic, like Asians were getting jumped. Like I feel like because of that, like it did really affect like my family at least, because we were, very fearful. And it's like it was just hard for us as well, because we were a business and we were afraid like if any of the customers were going to react horribly, but thank goodness they didn't. But like otherwise, I feel like the coronavirus didn't really affect like me too much, like my community. I feel like the only downside to that was just no one was wearing masks. Like they weren't being safe about it, and that like really really disappointed me. But like now though, like they're starting to, so thank goodness for that. But yeah.
I guess I can follow up after that. So I am a member of Drexel's Black Action Committee. So we have been doing a lot of groundwork within the Drexel community and the local Philadelphia community in combating a lot of things that have happened between COVID and then like all of the race relations. So I will say COVID has exacerbated a system we already knew that was broken. It completely showed just how unprotected and unhelped the Black community is. Between the lack of PPE, most of the essential workers were all Black, brown, Hispanic, Latinx. And so it was one of those things where our communities were the ones major hit because we were the ones that had to go work. We were the ones that were out here risking our lives. And then on top of that, we have families we come back to. A lot of us live in very small apartments with large families, a lot of elderly members, and it caused a thing where not only you have the emotional toll of everything locking down, but not being able to process that because you now have to make a living. And then on top of that, it's the fact that you can't see your family. So for me, I was supposed to come home for my birthday, which was in March, but then we went into lockdown. So I didn't go home until June. So before that, I hadn't been home since December. So from December to June, I was stuck in Philadelphia and I couldn't do anything. I couldn't go anywhere. And all my family's in New York. And as you know, New York got hit really bad. And so it became one of those things where it was like, dang, I have my grandma and my aunts, but they're all older. So if I go around them, I can get them sick without knowing it. So there's that anxiety. And my dad, he was an essential worker because he works for the city. So they turned his job into a food bank. And the things he told me about how there were a lot of elderly people who just were too scared to leave and they weren't being fed. So he would take some of the food and he would drive around the city. And if he knew someone that needed food, he was handing it out. So on one end, COVID showed just how much the government and like those people don't care about us, but it equally showed how much us as a community can still hold our own. Because my dad didn't have to do those things, but he took it upon himself because he understood that these are people's grandparents, these are people's family members, and they deserve to be able to eat and be able to like live a somewhat a semblance of a life during these times, and they shouldn't be forgotten. So I think the Black community did a lot for each other and showing how resilient we are in times of adversity because it's not the first time we've been left to fend for ourselves. And I think COVID really showed just how much people were fending for ourselves because that $1,200 didn't do anything. But the fact that you have people who are willing to crowdfund and put money into cash apps and saying, you know what, I'm going to look out for you. I may not have it right now, but I know that you need this a little bit more than I do. So I think that was one of the highlights of it. But yeah, it definitely just exacerbated already tense and weak situations.
For me, as an international student, it was hard because as our only source of income, most of the times are either working from club or working for the university. And a lot of our calls were canceled and we don't get any benefits. So we were left without any income, a lot of us. So that was difficult. And then in the middle of everything, the administration was trying to ask students, international students, to go back home if their classes were going to be online. So that's difficult when the borders are closed, when you don't know if you're gonna catch corona in the middle of the whole flight, or even if you're gonna put your family members at risk. So all of these moving parts were difficult. Definitely had to do a lot of work, but I think that as I don't know, we just had to do our best and reach out to each one of us, start thinking about how we can work together as a community because we're already from different countries. So that's already a big difference. As well as in the US, there's a lot of freedom. So there were a lot of people already mentioned it, like people not wearing masks, people doing their own thing. Like once I was able to come home, which it wasn't but until recently, people are mandatory having to wear masks. Like if you don't wear a mask, you will get a fine. Like the police is around all the time. There's a curfew every day at 11 p.m. But until 2 weeks, people were not able to go out on Sundays. So the difference is that, at least in my country, as a developing country, we cannot afford to have this kind of, our health system will definitely collapse. So we cannot just afford to keep doing this. So yeah.
So, and I don't know if anybody has seen lately, but I think Dr. Ala Stanford actually said that 1 in 3 Black Philadelphians know someone who died from COVID. And so this really exposed the inequalities, the inequities within both all systems all around, because one, in the healthcare system, it was so hard to get a test. It really was so difficult to get a test. And then meanwhile, you're on social media and it's like celebs are getting tests left and right, like getting tested every day. And meanwhile, you have to be dying on the phone in order to get a test. I had to pretend like I was dying to get a test for COVID, which, and mind you, I have a family. And so that was just ridiculous enough. And so it was very hard financially. It was very hard for a lot of Philadelphians, Black people especially. My family, we do contract work, so we did not qualify for benefits. We are multiple. There's a lot of people who did not qualify for unemployment, or people who never got money from unemployment. So they were just living off of $1,200. And I know you guys know, if you're from Philly, $1,200 ain't nothing. That's rent alone. So you have people trying to like survive off of 1,200 measly little dollars for 6 months. And that takes a toll on the mental. What am I going to do? I have to worry about my health. Do I risk my health to go to work? You have parents trying to figure out, like, what am I going to do? My child's not in school. And, you know, a lot of people were taking it and calling them bad parents for wanting to send their kids to school. But really, to me, I just looked at that as they just didn't know how they were going to work. They knew they needed money, and they did not know how they were going to handle this. And I said, we are literally leaving people to just fend for themselves. But I was very proud that community came together. A lot of me and a lot of other dance studios, we just made virtual hubs. I think community became more important. We realized that we had to come together in order to take care of each other. We had to, I remember dropping off groceries at somebody's door because they were a single mom who had COVID. So it's like we had to get really creative, and it just made me value the importance of community. But it really made me just look at the government like, is you serious?
Yeah, so with all these changing communities, it's really prevalent. Like that definitely influences the mental health of everyone in them. And so throughout this, how well or has Drexel supported your mental health throughout the pandemic? If so, what's some ways it succeeded or failed, and how can it be doing better?
Can I just jump right back in on this? I might make some people mad, but I don't care. I think that Drexel did. I think Drexel could have did more. I do, and that's just that. I think Drexel did not support students enough. You had a period where students were worried about what was going to happen with their work study, and they were just kind of left behind. To get this aid that they were offering, you had to literally send documents upon documents, and that's a lot. You're trying to manage school, you're trying to figure out what you're going to do, and you still have to send documents to prove that you need $1,000. Nobody's lying about needing $1,000. I think everybody right now needs $1,000. So that part, I think Drexel could have did more, and I think they could have did more as far as the mental health. It's a little bit difficult to get an appointment, and I understand it's a big university, and work and interning in a university counseling center. I understand, like, it's a lot to manage a caseload. But however, I think that could have been a great, Drexel is very involved in the community. I think that could have been a great opportunity for Drexel to be partnering with outside local mental health communities. There was a woman who raised money for therapy. Drexel could have partnered with that and been funneling students right into that if they couldn't manage that caseload. So I just think, like, in some ways Drexel could have did just a little better. I think they're seeing slowly, but yeah, they could have did more.
I feel like, to
Sorry.
just piggyback off of that, yes, they definitely should have done more. I feel like, from my perspective, Drexel, they treated it as if it didn't really exist until they had no point, until the students started putting pressure. It was like this ominous thing. And the fact that so many of us had to come together and look them in the face and be like, no, this is a problem. And then they continue to do that thing they love to do, where they write paragraphs about nothing and they talk in circles to make you feel complicit. And personally, I'm just annoyed, because it's like, no, we've written out our demands. We've said this is what the students need. We've shown you several times in several different ways. And I've sat in so many rooms with upper staff, and they're just sitting there just like, well, we want to help, but. And I'm just like, there's no ifs, ands, or buts. Either you are going to do the work or you aren't going to do the work. But trying to make me complicit to the runaround is not going to work. It's just going to make things aggravated. I also think that, to an extent, they didn't take into account just how much this pandemic and being in our houses have affected a lot of students. I feel like a lot of the staff and teachers weren't able to give us leeway because Drexel was demanding stuff from their part. It was one thing to be like, okay, we finished out our spring term, and that in itself was rough. But people who were doing summer term or people who had to come back and do fall term, I personally am not an online student for a reason. It doesn't work for me. It's not conducive. It's not helpful. I have very bad depression and anxiety. So sitting in my house and trying to make that a workspace is horrible for me. It just does not work. And I think that no one ever asks the students, hey, is this working? It's just at this point, we're just submitting assignments. We're getting double the amount of work and we're just putting it in before 11:59. And for me personally, I haven't even been doing that. It's been so hard to even find the motivation. And I've been to the counseling center and it doesn't work. Why? Because a lot of the counselors are not people of color or women. And I know for me personally that it's very easy for me to talk to someone who can understand the cultural significance of me being here. Being at Drexel for me is more than just me being here, but as a Black woman who's queer, who's a first generation college student, it's like there's a lot more pressure and things on my shoulders when I'm on this campus. There are a lot of things that I have to think about and do and move a certain kind of way. And that only got exacerbated by the fact that we were in a pandemic, by the fact that race relations outside are getting very tense. It's not overspilling. And so I'm getting to a point where I'm just sitting here like, I didn't feel comfortable on Drexel's campus prior to this, and now I very much don't feel comfortable. And they want to bring us back on campus, and I'm just like, people are bold. People have said things, have tweeted things, have done the thing, like they've done it all. And I don't know if I can come back to this campus because prior to this, I didn't feel like anyone had my back. And now it's gonna be like, well, because the president said and did this, that, and the third, I feel the need I can do that. And that's a very real reality for a lot of our students, that we are feeling very much under attack and unsupported from other angles, like outside factors and our college, and that shouldn't be the case.
Just to continue, for me at least, my experience, I think it took me some time to get comfortable with it. Definitely having this resource online through Zoom, it's a new experience. However, I just had to make the most of it. And what I think it's something that could be improved is that, and I understand it's a struggle, it's that as an international student, you're only able to have your appointments until you're in the US. But as long as you leave, you kind of have to stop. So maybe finding ways to support international students that are abroad, because we're still students, we're still paying tuition, we're still like consider all of this stuff, but we don't have access to this. And I understand like maybe they're not able to practice abroad, but maybe partnering with other universities or maybe high schools or advisors that maybe can support us better.
From my experience, I feel like it hasn't been like horrible, but it could have been better. Anything could be better technically. But like everyone, like I had a hard time adjusting in spring term because like in the very beginning when everything was going down, like there was a lot of miscommunication. It's like one moment they're telling you to pack for spring break, and then you're enough for 2 weeks, and then before you know it, like, oh yeah, you're getting evicted, you know. And it was just very confusing. It was really hard for me because it's just I had to pack, and luckily I live in Philadelphia, so like I didn't have to travel far. Like for those who are international students or those who are out of state, like it was really like hard for them, you know. And like some professors as well are, you know, and especially in the spring term, like they were understanding to an extent because like they were also trying to figure things out. But then like I feel like now after everyone, you know, somewhat figured things out, like Tom, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Mentioned like just submitting assignments, like I feel like that's basically what's happening, and like they're not catering to our needs, and it's just overall it's just shambles. Like I'm so sorry, but yeah, like it's I didn't have it didn't hit me hard like others because right now I'm currently on co-op, so like it didn't I'm not experiencing it as much as others, but from my experience in spring term, like it could have been better, like from how it's been done.
Thank you all for that. Moving on to our next question. It's going to be a little heavier. Talking about suicide rates among college students have really always been an issue due to the high pressure environment. But however, a recent CDC study shows that around 1 in 4 young adults from around 18 to 24 have contemplated or attempted suicide since the pandemic began. So what are your thoughts on suicide prevention as a college student? And has this been a struggle for you and your peers, or is it talked enough about within our Drexel community? I know there's a lot of questions. Feel free to ask me to break it down or one at a time.
I guess I'll speak to the suicide prevention and also what's happening based off of, talking to, since from counseling students. A lot of them feel like what could have been their own life, like their autonomy was stolen. So for many people, home is not a home. Like we think of home as a safe space. And for students, home is not a safe space. For some of these students, they were living in these small towns that were, small minded, and they themselves, I've had students who, I are a part of LGBTQIA plus community and who live in these towns that are just like super just horrible. Parents don't agree. There's no privacy. Some people are embarrassed about what their home life looks like. And so I think that autonomy was stolen. And I think also connections. People need to connect with people. We that is just our human life. Like I don't know about y'all, but Zoom is cool. These Zoom parties is not. It's not where it's at. Like it's cute. It was cute at first. The quarantine parties were cute. It's not cute anymore. People need to be interacting in real life, and so I think there's a mixture of there's no communication, there's no contact. There is also higher pressure because now I have to perform. And like you said, like some of these professors are not being kind to the workload. Like I felt like I was getting more busy work. I called it busy work. Like you're asking me to do this 3-paragraph response on Blackboard. And I'm like, I'm not even reading this. I'm just going to type this up real fast. I loved what you said. I didn't read what you said. I loved what you said. And I'm just typing it in. And it's just so much. It's too much. Give me the readings. Let's discuss this in class together. I feel like we're not on topic too. Like we're just kind of coming to class and we're just here. So I really feel like there's that aspect too. There's more pressure. And like Tay said, like not everybody's an online learner. I'm not. So you have some people who have disabilities, IEPs that came in, and they are struggling because there is no support or little support to help them get through. So all of that is really crumbling down on the 18, 24-year-olds, and they are really just trying to manage anxiety. And we need to be better about supporting from academia faculty, and also just creating more opportunities for students to connect better.
I guess I'll go next. What I'll say is that, well, one, I'm a part of Gen Z, if I'm not mistaken. I'm right in there. And I feel like, at least for my peer group, and when I've talked about things like mental health and things surrounding suicide and whatnot, we have somehow come to I don't want to say a desensitized, but there's a very common thing I've noticed between us where we talk about death and dying as of just like in a comical relief, but I also think of it as more so a coping mechanism, in the sense where I've dealt with that feeling in the past, more so in like high school and middle school, not so much now. I got therapy, that's why. It's great. It's a great thing. But I think we've gotten to a point where it's literally something that it's a weird existence because it's a very serious topic, but somehow it's turned into this thing of relatability between us all, of kind of just like, yeah, I feel that. And it's one of those things where I think it's a cry for help of like, we are aware of the problem. The generation before us, I think, did not have as much autonomy to be able to speak up the way that we do, but I feel like our generation is saying, no, we need help. like these are real things, these are real issues that people are dealing with, and we need that to be acknowledged, and we need to find the right resources and provide those things. So I think in order to curb this and combat it, the biggest thing is getting those resources, finding people of color and putting them in the counseling center, reaching out to all the different communities, checking on students to see if they're okay. I know for me, I didn't do any work for a good 4 weeks in all of my classes. And only maybe 1 or 2 teachers reached out to me and said, "Hey, are you okay?" And then when I sent my email saying, "Oh no, all this happened within the span of 2 weeks. Like I got my wisdom teeth removed, I got really depressed, I got anxious, and then I had a lot of imposter syndrome. So it was just like a mess." And I told them that, and they all were just like, "Oh my, I didn't even know you were going through this. I'm sorry." And luckily enough, they've been a lot lenient, but I feel like you don't have enough teachers asking that. When you see that a student is not showing up or is not participating or they're not handing in work, these are all signs of things that aren't right, especially being that a lot of us are in home and like have home backgrounds where some people don't have a space where they can sit down and sit at their computer. Some people are in different time zones, so they're not even here to meet with us in class, and no one's talking about that. Some people had certain things and resources on campus that they needed that are now completely gone and haven't been adapted or can't be adapted to Zoom, and no one's asking them, "Hey, are you okay?" And I feel like if I didn't have people in my life that I've made friends in administration because they asked me if I'm okay, I probably would have left a lot earlier. So finding that support and finding those people that are going to sit there and be like, "You know what, this is my job. I need to say, hey, how are you doing?" Like Maurice is great at doing that. He will disappear for 2 weeks, but best believe you will get an email saying, how are you doing? Is everything going well?" And I mean, he will lose sleep at night, and yet he'll still be there like, "How are you doing? How can I support?" So I think finding more people who are willing to do that and just have that conversation would definitely help, because we're all struggling. We're a community of people who are all going through different challenges, and it takes a toll on us, and it won't get better until we collectively come together and say, "Hey, I see you." I think being seen is the biggest challenge for right now, being that we're so isolated. We don't get the normal social interaction of even sitting in the classroom and being bored together. We're sitting at 12 different screens and half of them don't even turn on. So then you're just like, "You know what? Let me check out." Like that's literally what's happening. So yeah.
I think that definitely paying more attention to these little details are it's important. Again, I think that's a good point. Like I'm lucky enough that I'm a senior, so I was able to connect with people before the pandemic. But definitely, I wonder how like first year students, second year students, a lot of them were not able to connect as much as they wish they did. And definitely having a staff that it's better more diverse, I think is helpful because once you are in these very vulnerable moments, such as counseling therapy, like reaching out for help, you want to be able to share this experience with people that you feel comfortable with. So paying attention, I think it's important. And yes, and definitely needs to be more talks about social prevention because it's still not there. It's still like I've seen people and I've been in moments where this issue is still around. So we need to get together. We need to bring ourselves together and try to see how we can help and support each other. Like I'm not saying like personally, you shouldn't also. I think that you shouldn't also take the a position of a professional, but you can give them the resources and hopefully they're able to get to a professional that they feel the most comfortable that and to whom they can share with.
For me, I notice how like I mean it's not easy to talk about suicide or like in emails and such, but I feel like Drexel hasn't really addressed that at all somehow. I mean, like I know every now and then they'll send out emails like talking about how, "Oh, we have these resources that you can use. Like are there, like the therapy and such." And I know it was mentioned earlier how like it's kind of hard to book an appointment and it's like that's part of the reason as well, like people not knowing or like struggling to get help. I mean, personally for me, I like to like check in on my friends, like my classmates, like that I know of. Like I'll text them and be like, "Hey, how you guys doing?" Like even though I'm on co-op and I'm somewhat disconnected from them because they're in classes right now and I'm working, like what they're going through is different than what I'm going through. So like I definitely do try my best to like check in on them. But like it was said earlier, like some professors like don't even reach out if they like when they don't show up for a few weeks. Like that's not good. What else did I want to say? And with the jokes regarding the suicide, I feel like thanks to TikTok, that has really shown a lot of the Gen Zs calling out for help in a sense, and also is just another coping mechanism. So yeah.
Just going off of that, I think that's a great point. Just trying to work on the scheduling part because you don't really know what to expect about until you're there. So out of the blue, you get hit with all of these bunch of questions that you're like, okay, I was not ready for all of this. And then you have to fulfill them and hopefully you'll get an appointment whenever it's available. So I think that's something that needs to be improved.
So we've touched upon this topic generally throughout our entire discussion, but there's a nice added component to this question. How has your personal mental health changed over the course of this current year, and do you feel that connects to your physical health in any sense, and how they interact with each other?
I guess I'll start. I will say physically I gained quarantine weight, but I'm not really mad about that because mentally I was in a space where stress eating definitely helped. It was one of those things where I didn't realize how much exercise I got running from campus to campus because I'm not an athlete. I don't exercise. I don't like it. It's too much. So I thought that I wasn't in shape before. And then when I hit July, I realized, no, I'm not in shape now. And I didn't realize how much of a toll that took on me because before running from crease all the way to academic building, I could do that in like 7 minutes and I'll be fine. But now if I try to jog too hard, I get lightheaded. And part of that is because I lost my social mobility. It was something as small as just like not going to campus anymore. Cause like I can't really walk to the grocery store. I can't really go out and do things. So taking that away from me definitely deteriorated my mental health, just being inside all of the time because I'm a homebody. I like to be home. So the first like month of quarantine, I was great. It was like, oh, it's spring break. I don't have anything to do. I can binge watch. I can process emotions. And then like the first 2 weeks, it's like, okay, this is great. This is great. And then you hit that wall of, wait a minute. I started having the existential crisis of just like my entire world has been upheaved and nothing of my expectation is no longer that. And that was my 21st birthday because then I realized I was like, wait, I'm 21. I didn't do a lot of things because I couldn't do them and I wanted to wait until I was legal because in my mind I was like, I'll always be 21. It'll always be there. And then look what happened. It was gone. And I was like, oh, like a lot of the milestone things that I wanted to happen started to disappear. And then slowly but surely my mental health just went with it. It was like, okay, trying to apply for summer internships because I had co-op and those falling through, being stuck in the class, having to take a class over the summer, realizing that I'm graduating and the jobs that I want to do no longer exist because I'm in entertainment. So like we've had to downsize a lot. And it was slowly but surely it just started leading on to me eating more and more and more and just sleeping more and just being real wrapped up in that cocoon of just sadness because I was grieving the loss of everything going on around me. And then like the race thing started happening and I was just like, you know what? I gotta check out. But on the brighter side, I was able to find an outside counseling center that I could go to. And so I started doing therapy weekly, which helped. I also started journaling more and I got in touch with my spirituality a lot more and I learned how to do meditation and things like that. So getting in touch with those things helped. It also gave me a lot of time to process a lot of things I probably couldn't have had I stayed with the upkeep of school. I think we don't realize how much things we take and just like, if you think about it, like you're walking and every day you get a little bit more of impact on something and how much that builds up and we just ignore it because I didn't realize how little things that happened to me like 3-4 years ago still had an impact because I didn't get a chance to process it in that time. And I'm lucky enough to have a space because I have my own apartment and my own room where I could do these things. And so I think that everything that happening, it helped in that sense. But other than that, like, yeah, I gained a lot of weight. Again, I'm not really mad about it though, because it makes sense why. I haven't been exercising. I've been eating really bad because it's easier to order than to cook. And I've been sad. So sugar and salt helps. And I think besides that, just trying to keep a positive mindset, it took a while because I had to fully grieve everything that I lost. And it was like expectations, family, plans for my life. Because, you know, we all come in college with a plan and we're just like, yeah, I'm going to do this as soon as I graduate. And then the world just like completely just blew up. And so coming to terms with our new world and our new things, and then the election, it's like every time I got through one block, another block showed up. And it was just like, am I not done processing? I'm hoping 2021 is just a year of like good things. Like, I hope that that's the year. Just like, okay, we're going to reap the benefits of all this work I had to put in because I'm exhausted.
For me, when I'm not mentally well, I do the opposite. Instead of eating more, I don't eat at all, and that's bad. But like during quarantine, I realized like I definitely became very lazy. Like, you know, the first few weeks was fine. Like, oh, like I have all this free time, or like I can like be on Zoom and kind of sleep, you know, through class. Don't do that. um but like, you know, I did that, and like it just made me very lazy. And because of quarantine, again, I didn't go out. And in September, when I finally had a life, uh like going walking to work and like just walking in general like made me very tired. Like those months of being doormat, like just walking up like a flight of steps made me really tired. uh so like, yeah, but like I mentioned earlier, in quarantine, like my anxiety did definitely like went haywire up and down. Like, you know, like fearful of getting the virus. And I know you can't just brush off knowing someone who got corona. But yeah, my brother got corona and I was in like the same car as him. Like, I'm surprised I didn't get it, you know? Like, I was afraid. I was just that week when I had to move out of Millennium, like I was like, shit. Sorry. Did I did I you know, do I have it? Did I give it to anyone? You know, like that fear. And like after a while, I also, you know, had a lack of motivation. So, you know, I didn't do anything. But the things that did help me a bit in in quarantine was journaling, and crocheting and making friendship bracelets. So I'm like, you know, I'm very hands-on. But eventually like that got boring, and I also lost motivation and like interest in the things I found interest in. So yeah, but right now I am much better. I'm very fortunate to like have a co-op and have the opportunity to go outside safely. Um, as just things have gotten better, thank goodness. But now that I am living in an apartment, I have to like feed myself, and that for the first few weeks was interesting.
I think for me, my sleeping schedules were not the best. I'm not gonna lie. Sleeping schedules were, but it definitely pushed me to find ways of how I could take care of myself. Like, as awful as this sound, I knew things were gonna get bad. I knew it. At the back of my head, we're like, okay, no, things are not gonna be okay. So find ways where you're gonna take care of yourself before all of these things happen. And I had to do it. I I started to find joy into little things and big things, and try to find ways in which I can share with my friends, from things from cooking to hobbies, happening, what can we do? And that definitely helped me to help me get through and over the quarantine. I will still in quarantine, but just get through the process, get adjusted to it, because it's not easy. Like, there's so many moving parts that we just cannot control. Like I could not control, but at least I try to see how I can get ready, and I'm in a good place now. So yeah.
Um, Quarantine forced me to come face to face with myself and all of my traumas and the coping mechanisms that were honestly just toxic. So when quarantine happened, I don't know why, I just like kicked into overdrive. Like I gotta do something because I'm so used to always doing something. And it was kind of my way of controlling something. When you have somebody who goes through trauma, and my trauma is simply poverty. And so when you feel out of control, when you try to do whatever you can to control it. So I I did not have a problem with working out because I was a dance teacher, so everything went online. So I'm like, yeah, I'm just going to take all these contracts and I'm going to teach everything online. I'm going to go online every day. That was the worst idea ever. It was a horrible experience. I would never ever do it again. Nobody, I don't even want to look at a Zoom dance class ever again. But I was like going in like, and it wasn't until I think I cried, and then even with schoolwork, being hard on myself, like it has to be perfect, everything has to be like, it wasn't until one night I cried. I had to call my mom and I was breaking down, I was crying, and I was like, what if I get an 89 again? And that was like, and my mom was like, are you okay? You know you're not in elementary school anymore, right? You know you're grown. It's not about the grades anymore. She's like, this is not normal. You need to say this out loud. This is not normal. It is okay if you get a B. It's okay if you get a C. Nobody expected for this to happen. And it was just me, putting in like, excellence, excellence, excellence. You got to be excellent, and putting that pressure on me. I was about to lose my mind. Like I literally had a panic attack. And so I had to come, I'm like, what am I covering? Why do I feel like I need to be productive when we're in the pandemic? Why do I feel like I need to be excellent when we are in a pandemic? And why do I feel like I need to be on and have everything together when we are in a pandemic? And so I literally had to like tell myself, like, I started going to therapy again, and I was reminded, when do you move for yourself? I haven't moved for myself in a long time. I hadn't done anything for myself. It was always for everything else. So because the good side is I'm very protective now of my time, my space, my peace, and my joy. When if professors think they want to go over, thank you very much. I have to go. Bye. I have you no, you're not taking over my time. I need that hour to get back and to take, to walk for myself. No, we are not. I'm not taking a meeting after hours. I need this is time for myself. Like now I'm in my home, and my son, it took for my son to like interrupt the class going over for me to be like, you know what? I'm not even supposed to be here anyway. And he knows that. So how come he got more sense than me? A 4-year-old got more sense than me. So I've been very, very protective ever since then, and I think it has helped because before you could hide, you could busy yourself from your traumas. I think we all had to force to face ourselves through this pandemic. So that's kind of like how it changed for me.
I think that definitely this idea of redefining productivity was important for me, because if I'm not taking care of myself, if now I'm not okay with myself and with the people that I love, how am I going to fulfill all of these tasks? Like it will make no sense. Chances are that they're not going to be right, or that I will not enjoy it. And you shouldn't do things that you don't enjoy. Yeah.
Yeah, just to double back on that, 100% that was a word, because I definitely think our society ran so much on achievement and accolades and things like that, and how good you can look, that when everybody got just evened out, like, no, it forced a lot of us. I know for me, I didn't realize that achievement meant so much to me for external reasons. I definitely operated in a sense of, well, I have to assign myself to all these tasks and these things, because if not, what am I doing with my life? What is the point of me if I'm not doing something else? And as an active member on this campus, I had to realize, you know what? You don't have to do everything. Because within the last couple of months, I started an organization. I'm on 2 other e-boards, one of them that's fighting the rest revolution in Drexel and Philadelphia. I'm a community scholar, so I volunteered and did community service every once a week, on top of taking 19 credits and trying to do 3 minors and a major. And I was sitting there the other day, and I said, you know what? Not everything in this list makes me happy. Why am I still doing it? What is the point? And that's when I realized that it's okay to let things go. I think a lot of times it was very hard for me to let go, whether it was ideals or things put on me or things I put on myself based on external factors. And if there's anything good that came out of being in quarantine and having to sit with myself, is having to look at my reflection and be like, you know what? I never want to be this unhappy again. And it takes a lot of people, because I didn't realize it, because my dad even said it. I thought about it. I was like, my dad had me at a young age. So when he was my age, he had a kid. So in his mind, a lot of things he operates from like, well, I had to be really extra responsible at the time. I didn't get time to just live my 20s. So in my mind, I'm kind of like, well, I need to live up my 20s and be free, especially being that I turned 21 in quarantine. It was like, but I can't do anything. So I no longer want to let things go past me under the guise of that fear. That fear of, you know what if I'm not good at it? What if this doesn't happen? Da, da, da. It's like, no. Because at this point, we've seen that the country don't care. Like, the government did not care about us. They let us out to dry. So at this point, I might as well live my life to the fullest extent, because there's nothing that can be said or done that's going to make me want to doubt myself again. Because I had to stand 10 toes down by myself this entire time. Like, nobody else was in there when I was wrapped in that room, crying my eyes out, just like, my life is over, nothing will happen, I'm 21 and I'm a failure. And it was like, having to build myself back up from that place made me realize, yeah, you know, it's not worth it. The productivity is not worth it. What's worth it is your happiness, your peace of mind, your peace of place, and your peace of space. And if you have those three things, nothing else really matters. It was like, okay. And I think this quarantine, I worked to get those three things. I have a space, which is my room now, that I can call my own. I have peace of mind because I go to therapy once a week. And I've surrounded myself with friends that I know that are reliable, and that if I genuinely need anything and I was struggling, they could help me. So I'm like, why else do I need anything else right now? I don't. I mean, I need to graduate, but besides that, it's like, I don't need anything else.
Thank you all very much for those responses. We're going to transition a little into the movements that arose during quarantine. And so starting off, how do you feel movements such as Black Lives Matter are going to continue as the country begins to open up more?
Oh, Black Lives Matter. It is on and popping. That's all I can say. And I don't, especially tonight, whether which way it goes. One thing I can say is I think this made Black Lives Matter tired, like tired. There was no way to busy ourselves. We had to sit in it, and then to watch how there was just no care. I cannot like I watched so many things happen that I was like, I never thought I would see happen. I watched a classmate call out a professor and made that professor apologize to all the Black people in class for causing harm. I never thought I would, undergraduate me would have never thought I would have seen that day. I watched the department call out. I think a lot of people call, I don't know what page that was, that Drexel page, and they called the president out. I said, oh, we tired. And I'm here for it. So I think whether whatever happens tonight, whether who sits in that office, I think a lot Black Lives Matter is really just going to be like in people's faces. Like, people was calling, so what's your plan? I know you're running for office. What's your plan for Black Lives Matter? Oh, nothing. Cool. Boom. Not that one. So it's like, now I think it's really like we just standing, like you said, 10 toes down. Like, and we're not only creating these task forces to look cute. Now it's really like, no. So what you do? What, this is not good enough. Do it. Do more. Do better. So I think it's really just going to keep amplifying, no matter for what for tonight, but just in general. I think we've seen too much and we're tired.
Yeah. So I agree with everything that was previously stated. I'm just going to say, growing up in a country that I knew that America didn't like me from the jump. And the older I got, the more I fell into this illusion of like, oh, maybe it wasn't da-da-da-da. But once you start unraveling the layers, it's like understanding that I'm Black, I'm a woman, and I'm queer. That puts me at an interesting intersection, because that means that this country hates me more than anything. And if you add any more intersections, it just gets worse. So having that understanding at the point that we're in, I'm just like, I don't expect anything from the government. I don't expect anything from this election. I don't expect anything from anyone who has not either lived my experience or has tried to understand and genuinely be an ally to my experience. I don't care. I'm tired of trying to hold people accountable for things that they clearly have made a point that they don't care about. So at this point, it's like, well, it is what it is. You must be removed. You are now an obstacle, and you're not trying to do anything to not be that obstacle. So therefore, you need to go. I think of it as Black Lives Matter. We're coming to a point where, like, you know what? We can't keep asking y'all for things because we tried that. It's like Black Lives Matter it's just another generation taking their turn at stabbing the stick. It's like every generation, because I think some people forget how close we are to slavery, and they don't like to acknowledge that, because my great grandmother, she's 96, and her grandparents were slaves. And she has stories about living in the South and what things would happen on the farm she grew up on. And my great grandfather, he lived on a sharecropping farm. So it was like, and I knew him. So it's one of those things where like these things are so close and intertwined. Every generation has had a fight, whether it was my dad's generation fighting with the crack epidemic and everything, or my grandmother's generation fighting with the civil rights. This is nothing new for us. But I think we're the generation where we're like, we're tired, like we're sick and tired. We're not putting up with the respectability politics. We're not closing our mouths, and we're not going to make ourselves smaller. No, we're taking up the space. We're taking up all of the space. We're showing up to the rooms, and we're telling you this is what's going to happen, because we're tired of being ignored and trying to play nice. Trying to play nice is asking for basic human rights that y'all didn't even want to give us from the jump. So now when we're asking for human decency, you're just like, well, that's too much too. And it's like, one of my favorite quotes, I forget who said it, but it always rings in my head. It's like, equality sure feels like oppression when you're the person that's benefiting from it. And I carry that with me into all the spaces I go to, because there are some spaces where I'm the privileged one, and I have to be able to acknowledge that. Because if I don't acknowledge that, I can't go into other spaces and demand something from those spaces. You see what I'm saying? I feel like in order to get equity, there has to be a balancing act of that. And so I think even with the privileges I have, I'm willing to use that privilege that I have, what little I have of it, to fight for people that I know can't fight for themselves, or they don't have the ability because they're even more ignored than I am. And so I think at this point, it's more about the community coming together, because we're seeing it with the election. I have never seen this amount of pushing for voting, because I've only recently learned that only 23% of our country even votes in the first place. So the fact that we have more than tripled that number off of the strength that we had come together as a society and said no more, I think that truly shows the power that we have as people when we can come together for a common goal. And I think the biggest part right now with Black Lives Matter and any of the movements is that we need to centralize our goals. What do we want this country to look like? It's one thing to tear everything down, but we have to build something there. And if we're going to build it equitably in a way that affects all of us and that benefits all of us, we have to have those conversations. We have to be willing to listen to each other and figure out what works the best, because clearly we know that this doesn't work. And the people who are in power right now are going to continue to fight to keep it because they benefit. And like, privilege is a tricky thing to deal with, and we're going to have to get to that bridge at some point. But coming from a space of just not having it most of my life, I'm like, well, you're about to see. Black America has known this America this entire time. The rest of America is now discovering it. They're now seeing it. And I think that is what this period is. It's the, oh my God, this is where I've been living this entire time. It's like, yes, welcome. Do you need a pamphlet? Like, do you need your t-shirt? Do you, you need an introduction class? So I think doing that is the best thing that we can do for these movements, is coming together and centralizing these understandings.
I think that you either care or you either don't care. Like there is no middle ground. And I have people that I love and I don't want anything bad to happen to them. We have gotten to the point where they definitely they live 2 blocks away from me, and we'll have to text and tell them like, text me when you get home. And I'm talking about 2 blocks in Philly. So, and we're international and also national, but more if you're international student, like that's even a lot to deal. So we have to get together. There's a lot of work that still needs to get done within other communities and definitely other minority communities. And we need to acknowledge that too.
Uh, like one thing I just hope is like with what happens in 2020 regarding to like the Black Lives Matter movement and just everything else, that people realize that this is like a serious deal. Like why is there, well, like there's debate over human rights, like that you're not, it's human rights, you know, like you shouldn't have a debate over that. And it's, and that this is just not something that comes out during every election. Like this is a serious deal, and blacks have been fighting with this like their entire lives, and it's just not something that just pops up every 4 years, like legit, like, you know, like I hope people like finally realize that. And yes, Maurice, yes. And then like just from a personal experience, I just feel like growing up, like I'm not gonna be like, I've been quite ignorant in a sense. Like I went to like a Catholic school, and to a certain extent it's been sensitized of what I learned regarding to um racism that the blacks experience. And it's like to a certain extent I did, you know, experience racism, but like not as much as the people of color have, you know, like I I'm basically not like white in to an extent, you know, like I didn't go through what you guys had to go through. And with this movement, like I've learned more, and I appreciate that, and I'm fighting for y'all.
Thank you very much for all those responses. If I could throw in my personal experience, it's been a lot of education and reading about things that I didn't know, because as well I've been ignorant and I hadn't had a lot of experiences. I needed to read and gain that perspective. So as the country begins to open up, hopefully we can spread more resources and educate more people, as you know, people become more accessible and communication isn't solely through Zoom. So hopefully that education begins and continues to spread to more areas that it hasn't been reaching right now. Moving on to another movement that also was prevalent during COVID. It was the Me Too Drexel page. The hashtag Me Too Drexel page was created. And so many of these stories mentioned on this page involve fraternities and include students that go to Drexel. And how do we think that Drexel can support survivors when the rapist or person who assaulted them is on campus with them?
I can do this one. So I'm actually taking a class right now. I have a women's gender studies minor. So we're taking a class, and right now the section we were focusing were all of these things. So I recently wrote a lot of stuff about this. I think the first thing that needs to happen is there needs to be an overhaul of how they process and report sexual assault on campus. One of the biggest problems is that you don't know where to report or who to report to. And a lot of times campuses, the people that they put in charge of the reporting, their job is not for the students. Their job is to make sure the university stays afloat and that they look good. It is not it is not put in place to help the victims of these situations. It's put in place to make sure that the university doesn't get sued. And that's why they often discourage a lot of these women or people, not even just women, people, from reporting or going to the police outside of Drexel. That's one. Two, I think the page is a great thing because it sheds a light on a plot, like a hole that is in Drexel system. It sheds a light in how they're ignoring this very prevalent fact that happens all across America, and they're not handling it the right way. Like they can barely handle students who want to go to the counseling center and stuff. So how do you think they're going to handle these things? They don't know how to interpret or how to talk to these students about it. I think also making the consequences clear. there are no clear consequences written out in Drexel's code of conduct about what happens with sexual assault, and that's a problem. Then, like, they don't want to expel people, they won't want to suspend people, and they're making it that it's very hard for the people who come to report it to even show proof. You can show up with a signed confession, and they'll still tell you, "Well, I don't believe you." Like, no, we can't have the university be bad, especially because it has to go in the national report. And if that report says a certain high number, it will discourage people from wanting to come because your campus will be known. You see how that works? It's like a trickle down effect. So I think Drexel needs to overhaul all of the logistics they have written out about how they deal with sexual assault and make it easier, more accessible for people to report. Having trained staff to know how to talk to the people who are reporting it, and to take the right action towards wherever the person who has been assaulted or a victim of sexual assault, to be able to have them choose what they want to do. Because not everyone wants to go to court, not everyone wants to get case. Some people want something as little as keep them off of campus, keep them away from me. And one of the statistics that I learned is that out of most college campuses, there's only a 0.8% of people who actually commit these assaults, because it's normally a person who's a serial offender. So normally when you hear about these things, you'll hear it either from the same house that does it or the same person. They'll have more than one person report it, and they still won't be acknowledged by the university. So I think that's a problem, because if multiple people come to you and tell you, hey, this thing happened to me from this specific place and this specific person multiple times across different years, you would think that you would want to take action against that and be like, well, maybe there's some truth to this, you know? I think that whole believability aspect definitely plays a role in this.
I think I'm also curious. I know for me personally, I'm curious about what support is offered for victims, as is like, is it a thing of, here, I'm just giving this this thing, it's your initiative. It's up to you to go and get this support. Or is it that we are taking initiative and checking in on them? Um, I don't think we utilize the things that we have in school enough. Sexual assault can be a visceral thing. Me and my colleagues in dance movement therapy, we've always wondered, why are we not like using and able to offer support to victims of sexual assault? Why can't we use our training? We are trained to help in situations like that. And so I wonder why the school doesn't take advantage of that, since they don't got time or enough um, resources to handle that, I guess, on a counseling level. So I'm just wondering, like, what support is offered? Are we checking in? Are we, even periodically, even after, years after, like, just, hey, are you okay? I know this happened a while ago. If you ever want to talk, or, hey, just something simple as that, I think can be very helpful, because, like, it's about being seen. Do you see me? Do you at least, hear my pain? Because I think it just kind of slides under the table. Like that whole thing with the frat on a corner, I can't remember their names. I literally like wiped them out of my memory because I used to play in their playground as a child. My grandfather like rented them, to find out that they were really like, because they were in the news and it had been going on for years since I was a child, that they were, assaulting women at their parties. And it was just kind of like swept under the rug. It was like this, it had to make headlines for it to be dealt with to some extent, because the house is still there, right? So I think also we need to think about, like, one, how are we handling, what support are we offering to victims, whether or not we believe it. And as I've mentioned, like, how are they talking? Because I have a colleague who says she's an RA, and when an incident happened, our other RAs were just kind of like, well, did you do this? And kind of doing that victim blaming. And I think that is a problem right there, because that can make somebody think and retract. If you're telling me, you're questioning me, and you're making me say this over and over again, I might start like saying, like, is this even serious? Should I even report this? Maybe I shouldn't say nothing. Maybe I should just be quiet. So I definitely think that that's something important too. And I think we need to use our resources and really just go back and offer more support than what we're offering.
If no one has anything else to add, and please don't feel obligated to, we're going to move on. So if someone is triggered by a story that they do read on the hashtag #MeTooDrexel page, does anyone have recommendations for what steps they should take care of, should they use to take care of it themselves?
Could you repeat it? I'm sorry.
Of course, my apologies. If someone is triggered by a story that they read on the hashtag #MeTooDrexel page, what steps should they take to care for themselves? Is there any recommendations that you want? Is that clear? Is there another way you'd like me to put it?
No, I got it. I think of it as because like I do have experience with like sexual assault and that thing. And when I first saw the page, it definitely triggered me because it came out of left field and I was like, oh, I think, well, one, if you, at least for me personally, I was happened to be in a spot where I was dealing with that trauma. So to be triggered, it meant I had to start using the tools that I had gotten do my work at therapy. So I would say look into looking at, there are a lot of centers around Philadelphia that focus on sexual assault and the counseling aspects behind it. So if you just like go to do a simple Google search, you'll find a lot of resources and most of them are free. I know for one that I've worked with is WAR. They primarily work with women who've experienced like sexual assault and things like that. So they do offer counseling. It took me about, I want to say, not like a couple of months, about 6 months to get on the list. But once you start, you definitely stay and like you can consistently do it. And they have a lot of resources there. But yeah, looking at different places that are outside of Drexel that work with people who've experienced sexual assault is definitely the number one thing. Taking time to figure out how you process your trauma, figuring out how to stay mindful when you are going through this experience, because sometimes you can there's a lot of like PTSD that comes with that. So if you experience that, figuring out ways to stay grounded. If you experience like panic attacks and things like that, or anxiety attacks and like that kind of fear, making sure you have someone around you that knows how to help you in those situations, because for everyone it's different. I know a friend of mine, she has panic attacks a lot, and for her, if we like give her a cup of water, make sure that she stays cool down, we talk to her, try to keep her focused on us and not so much about what's like everything else, and just being there for her, that helps. But again, it's different for everybody. So finding a person that you can rely on in those instances when you do feel triggered and you do feel like all those emotions coming up, I think that'd be best. But reaching out to help, I think, is the number one thing. I know for me, it took 5 years before I was even able to begin to process it. So it's different for everyone. I think taking time with yourself and understanding that if you just can't, don't do it. Don't try to force yourself to process and be in that moment if it's just not possible, because that only exacerbate everything else around that. So I think, yeah.
I think that definitely being patient with yourself is important. Everything is a process, and feeling triggered by these like stories, it's sad. It's awful. People, I think that people are very brave to share their stories. However, it makes me so sad that there's still stories going on around this. Like in my head, there should not be more people saying this happened to me. Like this story should stop. Like, yes, this happened, it's awful, but I don't want any more people to get hurt by this kind of stuff. So take care of yourself, reach out to people that you feel most comfortable with. Try to ground yourself in the present, whether it be breathing, whether it be doing things that you enjoy. Um, Understand that there's people that love you and you're not alone. And even though at that moment might feel like things are going so bad, you're a very strong person. Like you are. And I know you already mentioned this, but like just getting back into the RA thing, I was an RA, and it's a lot of work, it's a lot of responsibility, but it's also a lot of emotional work. And we do get training to how to deal with certain circumstances like suicide events or sexual assault events. However, the training a lot of the times is not enough. And at the end of the day, we're also students. So we also had to get to work the next day, get to school the next day. We have a test that day at midnight. So it definitely needs to have a better support system for that too.
If anyone has nothing else to add, which is perfectly fine, thank you all very much for your answers. That is actually the end of our currently pre-made questions. So if anyone has any questions that we'd like to ask the panel, or Maurice, you'd like to take it for a second.
Yeah. So thank you, panel, for everything you've already said. We are getting close to time, and I do want to be mindful of that. So I do have a couple questions that I'm going to combine into one question. It's something that's been asked a couple of times already. So what has been the most effective self-care techniques throughout the whole year? What type of coping mechanisms help you get through? Has it been that bad of a year? We're not getting through anything.
I'll go and go into it. I'm gonna go back to again protection and community, protecting your again your peace, your space, your time is really like one of the most impactful things. There are things I can't watch. Like I did not watch that Walter Wallace video. I was not watching it. I'm not watching Black bodies be slain. That's something, that's my way of protecting my peace. I can still be aware, but my community again is maybe me protesting. Like that protesting is a form of self-care. And I think we like to think of self-care as cute. It's not always cute. Sometimes it really is like that groundwork. Me teaching my kids every day, that was self-care for me. When I had class, I think the day I found out about Breonna Taylor was the day I also had class with my teenage girls. And that really gave me so much life, so much hope to see that. So like by me giving back in a way. So sometimes the collectivism activities can really be super helpful because you need somewhere for that energy to go. Like sometimes you feel like you have to do something. So that way it feels like that. Even making a protest sign, like my friend does art therapy and she did a protest sign, a group where they made protest signs. They may not ever use those protest signs, but the idea of making it alone, it made them feel like they were doing something. So sometimes that reading, getting more reading. I love reading fantasy. I highly recommend fantasy books. Children of Blood and Bone, um, A Darker Shade of Magic, all those fantasy books really just to kind of like detach for a moment. Those are really like some helpful things that I recommend. I really do.
I guess I'll go
For
next.
me,
Um,
you can go.
oh, okay. I'd say for me, the first thing I did was I started to learn myself in the sense where I've never been put through a challenge like this. And so it gave me a lot of time to sit and just talk to myself and figure out like what I like, what I don't like, what works for me, what doesn't work for me, and just sorting that out. And I know for me that the way my depression and anxiety is set up, it takes a minute for it to build up. And I learned that if I set up little things in place before it gets to the bad part, I can kind of de-escalate it for longer periods of time, unless something, comes out and triggers me. And so I think just like little things like making sure I shower every day or making sure I eat at least twice a day, making sure that I take at least a break or so to just be like, do something that has nothing to do with my phone. If I need to, I won't be on my phone. Like I won't post I won't post on social media at all. I won't look on Twitter because again, people will post the videos and they'll tweet and like I also curated my content. So like my content is mostly Black woman, queer, and like fandom. That's it. So I don't get a lot of other information. I don't see things unless I go digging for it. And that's helped me a lot because that means I get a burst of like, news and education, but I also see things that I like. Binge watching TV shows. I've worked with my way through every animated thing on Netflix. I watch a lot of anime. doing things that I haven't done in a long time. So my Halloween costume I did from scratch. I was Korra from Avatar. Yeah, I was Legend of Korra. I was Korra for Halloween. I made the costume from scratch. And it was like a project I had for the last 2 months that made me really happy because I was like, okay, great. I haven't sewed since like 6th grade. It's doing those little things to kind of guide myself whenever I do that. And also understanding if you need to take a break, take a break. Like when I got my wisdom tooth out and I was home, I got really depressed and I was like, you know what? I'm just not going to do the work. What's going to happen if I don't do it? And I just didn't. And I needed those 2 weeks to just come back because now I feel a lot more motivated. I feel a lot more better and more willing to be able to do it. So I think learning yourself and what works for you is the best thing, and prioritizing yourself. You can be a selfless person and still be selfish. That's another thing I learned. I can be selfish with my time and my energy and my effort all I want to because it's mine. The only place that I can never escape is my own head. So that place better be peaceful. That's kind of how I think of it now. So yeah, learning yourself is your best bet and just doing what makes you feel right, not what's right in the sense or what you think you should do is always the best too. And also try to have a support system. Like if I really get bad, I know that I can go to my best friends. Like at least 2 or 3 times this summer, I've ended up in one of their bedrooms crying my eyes out, just like my life is going in. And they're just like, okay, here, dab my eyes. At some point they feed me. And then we watch something and I'm calm and I recognize that, okay, I'm safe here. So like building those safe spaces for yourself are also important.
I think for me, it was not being so hard on myself. As quarantine started, it was like, okay, I need to get all this stuff done. I need to find a job. I need to do all this stuff. But there's a moment where I just need to take a break and pause, as well as trying to find ways in which I can do things with my friends. Of course, now it's different, but I would just come up with ideas and be like, do you want to do this with me? Or how can we help? Or how do you feel about this project? So I figured that since I'm doing tasks or I'm doing projects, might as well do it with people that I feel comfortable and I enjoy. So I'll be reaching out with my friends. And definitely, if you're new, I'll say reach out to student orgs or people within those communities. Like there are people who are leaders, natural leaders. So if you're able to communicate with them and maybe open yourself, you will able to build a support system. So having a good support system was great for me too, because otherwise, it would have been very, very difficult for me to get over all this time. Yeah.
Like I said, like for a good period in quarantine, like things that was self-care like didn't help me. And to be honest, I'm kind of blanking out at how I coped then because it was a rough time. But I'm here now. But what really helped me was just not going on social media as much. Like so many things at a certain point was just like making me feel very like anxious, disheartened, disappointed, angry, like all these emotions. And it's just, I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna take a break. And that's exactly what I did. Um, and the things I also like to do now is like crochet. I made like my project now is to make an Afghan, which is basically like a blanket. So like that has helped me a lot. I also like to journal and draw, even though I'm not good at it, but that's fine. I also every now and then like to just write down like words. So basically like what I'm feeling at the moment, stare at it and wonder why do I feel that way. So like that has helped me a lot. And I like to rant a lot. So like I'll text my best friend or like I'll talk to my roommates and we'll just complain and we'll just listen, you know? Like so yeah. That's been pretty good.
Thank you all. So we have come literally right at the end of the time. But before we close out the event, I just want to thank each and every one of you, Thomas, you as well. Seriously, like this event is really, really important for me because when I first started here, I realized that mental health was something that people kind of talked about, but only really talked about it when it was in crisis. And I realized that like when winter term comes, everybody just assumes that it's okay for people to get the winter term blues or whatever they want to call it. And I thought that it was interesting that we didn't let you talk to us about what you need and what you want We just told you what you could have. And these events and this right now, hearing you all talk is a reminder while we do. So from the bottom of my heart, I do want to thank each and every one of you. I will be sending out an email with the recording of this event, as well as resources, Drexel resources and non-Drexel resources to help you support positive mental health going forward. And I just want to say thank you all for everybody who came. Thank you to the panel. And this is something that we're going to continue to do. It's going to be a continuous conversation. This is only one step forward in this long journey of life. So I'm going to stop recording now.